All right, it is 1 o'clock and we are basically ready to start. Looks to me like we've got a fully charged battery for our mic here. That's good. We are so glad that we could have all of you for this year's annual session. First time we've been back in 3 years, and to me, they were effective in the past. But my gosh, being able to meet and greet every one of you and talk with you, that's just been a huge blessing. So we really appreciate that. We're going to start with some quick words of welcome from our new president, Thomas Gordon, and then we'll introduce the speakers for the first 1 o'clock session. So this is Thomas Gordon, White County, Kansas City, Kansas.
Well, as you know, we have been here for this is our 3rd year, and I'm really proud to be the new president of Topeka. Sometimes we have to step up, even though we're not ready to step up. And my vision as a president is to be a president where that I have the support of the delegates. A president is only a president in word, but he has the support of the delegates. He can be, or she can be, a successful president. So without any further ado, I'd like to turn it back over to Jay, and let's have our wonderful working session here at Topeka. Jay.
Just a quick aside, Randall and I were over at the office yesterday, and I had never seen him. I've been there with Don several times, but Randall found the very first session for the silver here, and gosh, an old weathered book and everything else. So that was really neat to see. Our first speakers today, some of you might have heard him at Junction City or on Zoom when we had our executive board meeting in July. It's Dan Goodman, and Dan is the executive director of the Kansas Advocates. I didn't get the last 2 words written down. Read it again. For Better Care, KABC. It's a major player in dealing with improved conditions for Kansas seniors. He also has with him Libby Hastings, who's the communications and PR coordinator, and also Bob Conant, who is the legislative liaison consultant. So we are really pleased to have them, and especially look forward to what they have to present to us. All right. Here's your mic. See how I do with this. No noise. Can you hear me all right? All right, we're getting gas. Hey, Thomas didn't tell me the news, so I'm excited for you.
Thank you.
I got to meet Thomas a couple of years ago when the Wyandotte delegation started working with Johnson County about what they could do to get together to get some things done. So I think Thomas is a great choice. So I'm happy for you. I have been coming to this event in some way, form, or fashion for about 13, 14 years. I started, I think it's right, yeah. I started coming in about 2008. I remember some of you in the room probably remember Jim Sinclair and Herb Hall and some of those folks. And then since then, I had the opportunity to appoint some folks from Johnson County to still here at the legislature as the executive director of Johnson County AAA. So I've worked with Katie and Mary for a long time. And then the guy that's coming in a little late, we won't. Hey, Mary. And so it's always good to see people that are like-minded. So I'm here to talk about some of the issues we have that we're going to work on for this next legislative session. We have three primary issues for Kansas Advocates for Better Care. And maybe I have to start by just telling you, Kansas Advocates for Better Care, we're all about trying to get quality care for older adults, no matter where they live. When it comes to long-term supports and services, long-term care issues. And I can tell you up front that Kansas has a long ways to go to accomplish that. And you'll hear some of that come out when I'm talking to you about today. Again, I'd like to thank several legislators. I know not everyone gets, you don't grant everyone access with such a full agenda, so I appreciate the opportunity to come and be able to speak to you. We're going to talk about three things. I did Libby routed a hard copy testimony to everybody. Did everybody get one of those? If not, I think we can get you one. Great. Looks like you have one. So I'm going to try not to read to you, but some of this content will be similar to what you have on your written testimony. The first item I'd like to talk to you about is Charlie's bill. It was House Bill 2004. It did get out of committee last year, but it didn't make it to the floor. And so HB 2004 is officially dead, but the issue was still alive, and will likely come out with a new bill number in this next session. Currently, we're optimistic that the 2023 version of Charlie's bill will be discussed in the upcoming session. The bill will provide older residents the right to appeal an eviction when attempting to remain in their residence at an assisted living or Homes Plus facility. Too often, individuals and their families are promised that if they choose these placements, they can live and age in place. And again, then too often we hear stories from families that when residents outlive their personal resources and begin transitioning to Medicaid, that these facilities suddenly notice a rise in the residents' level of care needs, and that would make them subject to an involuntary discharge to a higher level facility. KABC is not advocating that assisted living and Home Plus continue to serve individuals when they can no longer meet their needs, but we are advocating that the residents of these facilities gain access to due process when there's a disagreement in the facility of the stated reason as to why they've been provided voluntary discharge. It just stands to reason that, when you're a renter in your life, and you don't pay your rent and they want to evict you, there's due process, right? You can't just evict somebody without going through a process. If you're a homeowner and you stop paying your mortgage, right? They can evict you and take your property away. There's a process, right? You go through due process. And then if you even go into a nursing facility, they can evict you, but you have rights. And one of those rights has a due process. But if you go to an assisted living or Homes Plus, your only appeal right that you have is to the person who provided you the eviction or the involuntary discharge. We want to change that because there are many times that we hear about that resident doesn't agree with the reasoning that's been provided by the facility. And again, too often we hear that their functional needs are now to the point where they can't serve them, when in fact it just happens to coincide with them having to roll over into Medicaid. And we understand their business model. We understand their needs to make their business model work. But when you promise people at admission that they can age in place, that's what it means, right? That's part of the other side of that agreement. We just want to make sure that when at all possible, those folks can stay in the assisted livings and Homes Plus. We would appreciate your support and advocacy on this bill. Currently, the bill is in the Judiciary Council. they are determining not if the bill will pass in the next session, but what it will look like. How will they administrate such a task for that appeal right should the bill pass in this upcoming session. So when the Judiciary Council gets done, I believe in December, or November, they will provide written direction to legislators who are considering this bill to show them how they would implement such a bill or such a law if it was in place. So we are encouraged that this bill will come about. The session would be really support. The second issue I'd like to talk to you about is reestablishing case management services for the frail elderly, the physically disabled, and the brain injured waiver populations. Some of you know, but others may not. Waiver program is a Medicaid program that assists folks, allows people to stay in their home to get their long-term care needs met instead of having to go to institutional care. And back in 2013, in the onset of care, these three waiver populations all lost the opportunity to get case management as part of their service within care. What the state offered instead was managed care organizations now offer care coordination services. And care coordination services are provided by employees of managed care organization. And so there is already conflict with how they design that, right? You have your basic insurance company is now your only rep coordinating care. So you can imagine if the individual doesn't agree with the managed care organization on care issues and how you get service, where your representation may not necessarily represent your interest, but maybe the interest of their employer. So there's that issue, but I'm not here to really talk about that issue. I just want to give you that up front. The real issue is that Kansas is 47th in the nation in low care residents in nursing facilities. 47th. If it wasn't for Missouri, Oklahoma, and either Mississippi or Alabama, I don't know which one. But if it wasn't for them, we'd be off. Kansas can do better. Older Kansas deserve better. And really, what's happening is our community-based service options don't support older Kansans staying in their homes as well as it could. Case management was a key component for individuals receiving services in their home to help them troubleshoot those issues when a homemaker doesn't show up. When you have a significant health event and that plan of care no longer meets your needs, these case managers are experts in being able to help you get connected back to that home health agency, line a fire under the agency to make sure they get that worker back up, or someone else has got to help you with those care needs. First of all, when somebody qualifies for ACVS, the ACVS waiver, the frail elderly waiver, this is their first time, right? They've never been involved in a service process like this before, and they're trying to meet their needs, but they have no experience. And so currently, as the system is set up, is you're screened by the area agency on aging, right? And they do the assessment to make sure you meet your functional eligibility. And then you reach out to the state and they determine whether you're Medicaid eligible, right? So you got two things going on at once. If you're lucky, they're in concert. Sometimes one comes before the other. The state has 45 working days to determine your eligibility for finances. And the functional assessment usually comes a lot quicker. So then you have this person that comes out and assesses your service. Takes somewhere between an hour and hour and a half to 2 hours of assessment, and they determine your score. If they determine your score to be 26 or higher, you're eligible functionally for ACVS, and you're also eligible for nursing facility if you score 26. So you think you now have a contact, right, to get some help for your services. No, the assessor that works for the area agency on aging then hands that off to an MCO of your selection. Your selection, you have 3 choices. Well, you actually have 4. You have a choice of 1 of 3 MCOs or a PACE program in some areas, not all areas, some. And once you select that agency, then they will refer you and your case to that MCO. So now you get assigned to a care coordinator, right? If you're determined eligible for Medicaid, which let's assume you are. So then you're assigned to a care coordinator for the MCO, and they're going to do another assessment, their assessment, to determine how they're going to serve you. And then they're going to set up your services for you, right? So now you think you've got a contact, right? You've got a contact at MCO. Except a lot of these care coordinators probably have a caseload around 200. Okay, think about that. And they may not be located in the community of where you live, or even in the county you live. So how familiar do you think they are with the services available in your area or your city? Okay, so say you get set up correctly, right? You get a good home health agency, you get a good personal care attendant, they come every day, everything's going well, your needs are being met, until the person doesn't show up. What do? You know, you have a number of your care coordinator, maybe you call them. You might try to call AAA, but you know, they can't do anything because you're on Medicaid. So you have to wait for your care coordinator to get it to you. But you really need services today, or maybe even this week. But you're at the discretion of that care coordinator and a managed care organization. Well, a couple of weeks go by, a couple of days go by, and you turn into a couple of weeks, and you still don't have a homemaker. But you have needs that need met, and you probably you're getting these services because you need them, not because you want them. So your health begins to fail. And maybe you're at a point where you're so fragile that if you don't get those services met, you're going to deteriorate to the point where you get hospitalized. Well, you get hospitalized, and then a lot of times these folks that get hospitalized then go into a short-term stay at a facility, right? So you get to that facility and you find out, if you're the lucky one, you get to go back home and say really need services, right? And you get to go through that again. But a lot of these folks never get out of the short-term stay. So essentially, we're not providing those services necessary to keep low-care older adults in their home. And home is where everybody wants to be, right? I have yet to meet an older Kansan has told me or anybody they know that I can't wait till I can qualify to do an Henderson stuff. Anybody here? Anybody know somebody like that? I've been doing this for 30 years. I've never met that person. But that's a fact. We have too many people that are low care need in facilities. We can do better than 47. Oh, and by the way, did you know that a study came out in the spring that Kansas also is 46th in the nation in dealing with their staff shortage issue in long-term care facilities? So we're forcing them out of their homes where they want to be into facilities that are going to provide inadequate care, or at least care that's not desired, right? We want high quality care. And the biggest indicator of quality care in facilities is what? Anybody gonna guess? What's the biggest indicator of care, quality care in facilities?
Staff.
Staffing, right? Staffing. So when staffing's down, quality care is down, right? And another stat I'll throw out there is, did you know during the pandemic that we were 37th in the nation in utilizing antipsychotic meds, and we got to 39. So we're not at the bottom 20%, but we're right there, 39. There's strong 39. So when staffing goes down, guess what else happens? Medications go up to help with behaviors, right? Undecided behaviors of facilities. So again, these three issues I'm talking about, they all tie together, and really they deserve all of our attention. So that's why, again, I'm here to try to convince you that case management, bringing us back to the waivers, is a good thing for older Kansas. In my mind, it's a no-brainer. It is best to bring us back. Why? Community-based organizations are familiar with the services in your community, right? Somebody that's located in your city, your town, your county is a lot more familiar with those people that may be 50 miles away, have a caseload of 200, right? That's one reason. The other reason is they're not conflicted. These people do not work for insurance agents, so they, when things conflict, when issues conflict, they're going to be advocating for that individual, not necessarily the bottom line of the MCO. So keep that in mind. I would urge you to strongly consider helping us bring case management back for these waiver populations. We can do better, and we hope to. The last issue, I've already touched on a little bit, but I wanted to talk to you a little bit more about it. And that's the issue of the use of antipsychotic medication. It is, SHL would like you to support legislation that would require written informed consent before administering antipsychotic medication in older adult care homes. Kansas continues to be a poor performing state regarding the frequency of administration of antipsychotic drugs. Kansas still lacks a concerted effort to reduce administration of this medication, and as a result, older Kansans continue to experience harm. That harm that is included is strokes, falls, infections, confusion, and premature death. And a lot of times we have unchecked use of this medication. It is a clearly defined problem, and there is available data demonstrating Kansas is woefully behind the majority of the nation. They're actually, again, 39. Of the three stats I've given you, Kansas is better in that stat than the others, but still is barely above the bottom 20%. According to CMS guidelines, CMS is kind of the federal oversight of these services. It is the right of the residents to be free of restraints, which includes chemical restraints. When people think about restraints, you always feel, you think of the obvious, right? Equipment that would restrain someone from doing something. But the other way they do it is through chemical constraints. And we feel like that they're too often used at facilities. And I think it's more than a coincidence that when staffing went down in facilities, antipsychotic drugs went up. So just something to consider. Finally, I'd like to offer SHL an opportunity to perhaps partner with KABC next year in your event. We have an annual KABC as an annual caregiver support training we provide every year. We usually provide it in late September. This year, Libby put that training on, and it was a success. Usually it's in Lawrence, but we'd be open to moving that to Topeka if we can figure out a way to partner together for next year. We feel like cross-promoting your event with your annual event with our caregiver training. There's a lot of like-minded folks that you might want to keep. A lot of you are probably caregivers in a room or have been, would be my assumption. If you're 45 plus, you either are a caregiver or you will be soon, probably more than likely. And so the caregiver training and support might be helpful to you. We also think it would be a good opportunity for some of you to get exposure to some of the issues that we see in long-term care, much like today. And we would love any opportunity to do that. Again, we usually throw our caregiver training in late September. Obviously, your session's always been in October. Certainly, we'd be open to looking at, all options on the table, whether it's a change in date for us, maybe a change in venue, whatever we can do to make it work and help promote these events. Because I think there's a lot of synergy between Kansas Advocates for Better Care and the Kansas Civil Legislature. And then lastly, I'm going to give you an opportunity. If you don't have anything going on Sunday, first of all, I'll set this up by saying the Chiefs don't play Sunday. They play Monday. We knew better. We're better than Tom Brady. We need not to compete with the Chiefs. So Sunday from 2 to 4:30, we'll have a fundraising event in Lawrence at Sully's. It's right out of downtown, and there's no cost for admission. We'd like, if you have an opportunity, you live close, to come to the event. There's good content that you'll hear. You'll hear some of this again, unfortunately. So if you like what I have to say, you found me entertaining, come again. But you're asleep, maybe you want to pass. But anyway, we'll have good content, and you'll get to meet a lot of good people. And it is a fundraiser, but the majority of our fundraiser is sponsorships that we've already received. We do have some raffles that you can get engaged in if you like anything. Consider getting in on that, but you don't have to. And it's a light. It's not a meal, but there's some light appetizers and drinks available. So it's a good 2.5 hours of your day. If you want to come over on Sunday, I think the weather's supposed to be good. Last time I heard those 70s, right? That's not bad. It's sunny. We're really good shape. So, hopefully you'll take me up on some of those. But I'm also here to answer questions on the substantive issues if you have them.
Jason,
Yes,
for a person that has been, quote, evicted or served notice in their assisted living facility that they're being terminated, other than going to live with a family member, what are their options?
their options is a higher level facility, like a nursing facility. Yeah.
Yeah, but you said nursing facilities also have that option, do they?
They do, but they don't have the same, they are, according to why people get evicted out of assisted living and homes plus because they can no longer meet functional needs. Nursing facilities offer 24-hour care, which assisted living plus have. So nursing facilities don't have the same restrictions to provide that care, so they really don't have that option they can choose not to admit you, but they're not going to discharge you because of care needs most likely. Now I think they do that sometimes, but they typically don't give that as reason.
Can they evict you because the person is physically violent or something like that?
I believe they can. Barbie, you want to ask?
I was just going to add that if you're in a nursing facility, you do have these
Right.
rights.
Right.
That you don't have.
That you don't have a
Yeah, you do have due process in nursing facility. You do. So
it's almost like an assisted living person. They look at that as an option for you that you select or don't select. Whereas in acute care, you need that care period.
right. Well, in the business model is different, right? Most assisted livings, if not all, they don't tend to take Medicaid. So, and that's part of the buying, right? Is they promise a lot of times, directly or indirectly, that you can age in place if you come live here. But then when things start to get tough, then it's like, well, you no longer meet our needs, or we can't meet your needs, so it's time for you to go. And again, we're not trying to force them we don't want more poor care out there. So if they truly can't meet your needs, that's something that everybody needs to consider. But what we don't want to see happen is them to be using that as an excuse, because now that you've spent your personal assets, you spun down, and now you're going to qualify for Medicaid, and they don't want to serve you for Medicaid credit. That's what we don't want to see, right? I mean, nobody wants to see that. Yes.
Do all nursing homes have to accept Medicaid currently?
I don't know, I mean, there are some privately owned facilities, most of them have what they call case mix, which means that they have private beds, Medicaid beds, Medicare beds, so they all, but there are some privately owned that only take private.
They're not required.
They're not re-
Thank you for the presentation. I'm Alan Schmetten. I'm from out west, North Hays, Kansas, in Ellis County, PSA 3, which doesn't mean anything to you, but it does to the folks here. I'm also a member of the Can Care Advisory Council and have been for a number of years. And I was wondering, what is our representation there? I mean, I've represented intellectual and developmental disabilities and other waivers. But do we have direct representation on the advisory council
No,
that you know of?
no, we do not.
Okay.
Now, I don't know, Silver Hair,
Yeah, that's right. It's Jay's on. We've addressed this whole issue of, nursing aides, home health aides, all those type of things in the shortage. And I remember involved just a few years ago with working on both the retention and recruiting of them. And the statistic that was thrown to me that ought to alarm all of us was that this is a couple of years old now, but I don't think it's much different, that by 2026, we'd be 74,000 slots, positions open for those type of care individuals. Well, that's almost insurmountable. And working in the area of intellectual and developmental disabilities, we had our senior people directors working in some of the homes for IDD this past year, primarily due to COVID. But we were on a very, very strong advocacy program for raising the pay for our DSPs, direct support professionals, which are very similar to any home health care. And finally, since 2008, last year, they got a 25% increase. A huge, yes, President Carpenter was a big part of that, as you know. But I think that there is a sense now in the legislature that we've got to bring up the pay in order to get people into the business. And even if they stay for a short while, doing the work they do for us is a great pathway into nursing or any of the healthcare professions. My question to you is, I know that there's just talking to Barb and somebody else contacted me about a big coalition of about 50 organizations.
And, yeah,
Okay. Is Interhab involved with that? Yes.
Interhab attends, yes.
Okay. Because I'm thinking that in order to really address this problem, we got to go full bore ahead. You're not going to fill 70,000 positions by 2026.
Right.
If we don't do something directly with the pay,
Right.
and I'm not sure what other incentives that we need to provide, but that really needs to be recognized at the legislative level, because it's just a matter of time that all of us are going to need some kind of help out there if we don't already.
Right, and what you're talking about is, the reason I didn't mention intellectually developmentally disabled is their populations through Can Care, they got to keep case management, whereas the other three populations lost case management. So that's why I specifically mentioned case management for those three populations. That's one thing the IDD populations have that the other three do not at the moment. And so if we get that back, all populations will kind of be on the same level in terms of who they have working for them. But what you say is very true. And that issue exists all across Kansas. My long-term care experience, much of it has been in Johnson County, and I know that they have issues when somebody rolls off the Senior Care Act to go to Medicaid because they need more services. And then they roll over to Medicaid, get additional services, and find out that they can't get services at all, because the only way they can get them is they self-direct their care, because the MCOs don't have they have a network adequacy issue, and they can't find agencies that go out and serve them. That's a problem. That's in Johnson County, the most populous county in the state. Now, think about what that means in rural and frontier Kansas, where, if you live in a town of about 2,000, and the nearest home health agency is 45 minutes to an hour away, how likely is that home health agency going to be able to staff your case, right? We need to fix that. So you're right on the money on the home health issue. We do need to we need to raise the bar financially to get more financial incentive, get people engaged. You know, but 5 or 6 months ago, the gas prices were astronomical, and you're asking somebody to go out and serve somebody for 2 hours. They're going to drive 30 minutes both ways to serve somebody for 2 hours. You're going to hire that person. You're probably making minimum wage, right? Paying the gas, serving that person and driving back. That's difficult to find people to staff those cases. We need to do more. And not to mention, home health is home care in general, personal care attendant, homemaker. That's tough work, man. Anybody that's ever been involved in that in caregiving capacity or informal support, that's no joke. And then you find that difficult work, low wage. No wonder everybody's in a hurry to get involved, right? So we can't control gas prices. We can't control the number of people that are getting older and need help, but we can do something to incentivize people to get involved. And that's probably what we're really focusing on. Well,
Thank you. That's a great answer. You know, I've often heard Jay, the leadership here in SHL, say that we represent 400,000 seniors across the state. And, you know, we mobilized in some areas to get some things done through the legislature, but this one is a direct hit.
yeah,
And if we don't get, more help in the field, in the rural areas, and you're now saying even in Johnson County, so it needs to jump up to the top of the list, and there probably needs to be some guidance on how to do this with the legislature, because it all comes down to dollars, really. It does come down to some availability, because when you get into rural areas, your population is aging, you don't have as many people available to do that, but primarily across the state, it comes down to dollars and cents, and that's coming from the legislature.
and that directly again drives up home care residents in nursing facilities, right? Again, people aren't rushing. They're not fighting each other to get into nursing home, right? This is not a point of destination. They're going there because they have a need they can't get met in the community. They're not going because they're tired of living at home. They want something different, right? So, other questions?
Thank you for coming. This is the second time I've heard you.
Oh,
Yes. But I saw this same handout, and I found it interesting when you spoke on your item number 2 for the physical frail elderly, physical state brain injury, and you got to speaking about the process that it goes through. Okay, you have to be evaluated here. Then your next step, you have to be evaluated there. You have to get to 26 in order to reach your care. That is data that I would like to see, if you could bring that when you come, because the more data that you have, the more information that I can get out to others, so that we know what to expect when the situation arises, that we know, okay, this is what we've got to look for, this is what we can plan for, how to circumvent some of the situations so that our loved ones don't get stuck.
Right. Yeah. We always are continually asking for information, right? The reservoir for that information, historically, has been Kansas Department of Aging and Disability. However, the answer we get on occasion now is sometimes that they don't gather that information anymore. The managed care organizations track that information. And so we're always on the quest to get the information that would make for a good case, right? Sometimes that's more difficult than it would seem to be.
But you're again,
Yeah.
then it always goes back to, okay, here's my left hand, I'm doing this, my right hand's doing this, but nobody's working together.
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah,
how
right.
are we going to get it right?
Right. Well, I mean, you keep chopping wood, and hopefully at some point you reach the clear.
I'd like to burn that. Sorry.
No, I hear you.
True though.
Yeah. Other questions? Well, I don't think I put anything on speech. That's really good. That's really good. I appreciate the opportunity again to visit with you. I hope to get to do that again at some point. I always think this is a great process, and it's one of the highlights of working in, in my new job. I've always, throughout my career, advocacy has always been what I've liked to do the most throughout my career. Sometimes the things you have to do in order to advocate for ultimate goals can be a detriment to really doing what you're passionate about. In this job, I'm able to do that. So I'm really excited about the opportunity to be with KABC and work with you in the future. Again, remind you again, if you had nothing else better to do on Sunday, and I know it's nothing cheap. So it's 2 o'clock, so it's, not worry about church, we can click the church. So you should already be all dressed up and ready to go somewhere. So come on over to Lawrence and come to Sully's and relax and have a good time. Thank you.